My last group of logical fallacies involves fallacies in logical structure. Some fallacies are truly failures of logic because the formal structure of the argument is illogical. The prime example of this would be begging the question, also known as circular reasoning. For example, the holy text is infallible, as it is the word of God. We know that it is the word of God because it says so in the holy text. And the holy text is true because it is the word of God and God wouldn't lie to us. It says so in the holy text. And so on. In general, the problem with circular reasoning is that it assumes what it is supposed to prove. This is clearly a logical fallacy. Affirming the consequent is another failure of logic. It is a misunderstanding of how implication works. Implication is a sentence of the form if X, then Y, where X is the antecedent and Y is the consequent. Even if the implication sentence, if X then Y, is true, and you affirm that the consequent is in fact true, you cannot logically infer that the antecedent is true as well. For example, let's assume that you don't remember if you bought a sandwich or not. You can think that if I bought a sandwich, it will be in the fridge. Then you look in the fridge and see a sandwich. Now you may infer, incorrectly, that you did buy a sandwich and put it in the fridge. But perhaps it was actually your roommate or your co-worker who put the sandwich in the fridge instead. So it's not yours. A very similar fallacy is denying the antecedent. For example, you think again that if I have bought a sandwich, it will be in the fridge. But this time you remember that you did not buy a sandwich and therefore infer that there is no sandwich in the fridge. But again, your roommate or your co-worker could have put one in the fridge without you knowing. One fallacy may be caused by lack of imagination, or it could be intentionally used for political reasons, among others. It is the false dilemma, also called black and white thinking. You are either with us or against us, and everyone is either absolutely good or absolutely evil. These are so clearly fallacious examples that I hardly need to point out the gray area between the black and white. Perhaps somewhat less obvious example comes from a detective story, a famous one, where Sherlock Holmes claims that after all other possibilities have been disproven, the remaining one, no matter how unlikely it is, must be true. This statement is true in the unlikely case that, in fact, all possible solutions are known. The problem is that in the real world, it is unlikely that all possibilities could be known. That is why it is not enough to disprove other theories and then claim that your very unlikely theory, that lacks any evidence, must be accepted as true. You have to bear the burden of proof and show that there are good reasons to accept your theory. Reality is complicated and hardly ever binary. Things don't fall into just two nice categories, like black and white, men and women, healthy and unhealthy, and so on. Often there is a lot of overlap and several categories and other possibilities besides the obvious ones. As the last fallacy I will cover here, I have chosen the fallacy. You commit this one when you notice that someone has used a fallacy in their argument, and so you conclude that the claim they were trying to support is false. But just because they made a bad argument, you cannot really tell whether what they were arguing for was true or false, only that their argument was useless. Remember that The argument has two parts, the statement or claim itself and the argument, the reasoning supporting that statement. To get to the truth of the matter, you need to investigate it properly.